Hello and welcome. We're going to talk tonight about a very serious and important and heavy topic, but I hope that doesn't deter you from sticking with us and listening, because I think you're going to enjoy, in a sense, learning things that you perhaps have not thought of, things that you will be glad you've learned, things that are important to know. My guest tonight is Ellen Kennedy. Dr. Kennedy is the founder and the executive director of World Without Genocide. So our topic tonight is the big topic of genocide. Dr. Kennedy's work is housed at the William Mitchell School of Law, and it's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Mary.
To talk about your work. Before I ask her to define genocide and to tell us more about how she started her organization, I want to just tell you about some of her wonderful awards. She's received the Outstanding Citizen from the Anne Frank Center, the Higher Education Leader of the Year from the National Society for Experimental Education, the Outstanding Service Award from the Midwest Sociological Society, and the Minnesota Women's Press Changemaker Award. She also, just this year, got a wonderful award called the Minnesota Ethical Leadership Award. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It really speaks well for all the people I have the opportunity to work with. None of this work happens just because of one person. It all happens because of really committed people.
And as you and I were saying, receiving the award for yourself, but also for your team and for the students you work with, is so energizing, I bet.
It is indeed. And I think the most important thing is that you mentioned the word students. We work a lot with students, and I'll hope to say more about that. But what it really says to students is that there is external recognition for working in human rights, for taking that intrinsic motivation, bringing it forward, and encouraging people from the local to the international levels to really recognize that work.
Yes, I want to hear a lot more about the students and their involvement. But first, just tell us briefly how you started this organization. And I know it was partly based on a trip you took to Rwanda.
That's right.
Back in
2005. In the summer of 2005, I spent a few weeks in Rwanda. And there was a young woman who was traveling with me. Her name is Alice Musabende. And at the time, Alice was 25 years old, and she was with our small group of half a dozen people, sort of as a translator and a tour guide and a facilitator. She is Rwandan, and one evening I got up the courage to ask her what had happened to her and her family in 1994 during that genocide. And in 94, 800,000 people in Rwanda perished in 100 days in a genocide.
800,000.
800,000 in 100 days, Mary.
3 months.
And in 1994, Alice was 14 years old. Her mom had asked her to go on an errand to her cousin's house in the next village and to come right back home. Alice went to her cousin's and did not go back home. She stayed overnight. And when she returned home, she was the one to find the bodies of her grandparents, her mother and father, her 9-year-old sister, and her 12-year-old and 2-year-old brothers. And Alice, as it turned out, is the same age as my own daughter. When I heard that story, it truly broke my heart that this young girl at age 14 became utterly alone in the world. And yet her life was so different from the life of my own daughter. I had done nothing. As an ordinary citizen, I knew what was happening in Rwanda, and yet I did nothing. I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't call my senators from Minnesota. I didn't call my representative from my congressional district. I did nothing, and I felt a real sense of culpability. And that was what we call an enough moment in my life.
I've had enough.
I have had enough. I needed to do something.
So a real turning point, wasn't it, to meet her?
Truly.
You know, it reminds me of a quote, and I'm paraphrasing it, but one death is a tragedy, a million's
A
is
statistic.
a statistic. And so meeting
Yes.
this one girl who had these family deaths,
Yes.
it then became a tragedy for you in a
Absolutely.
way that it wouldn't have, right?
Bill Clinton was in the White House during that genocide, and he said later that he probably could have saved a few 100,000 lives. Now, the magnitude of that statement to me is overwhelming. Think about saving a few hundred lives, or a few lives, or even saving one. How many of us can say that?
Right.
But he said he did nothing because he didn't hear from a single one of the 100 senators or a single one of the 435 representatives on the Hill. He didn't hear from them because they didn't hear from us. Like
so it
I didn't
comes
make a
right
call.
down, doesn't it,
That's
to
right.
the
Each of us.
individual.
Absolutely.
So then you did what? I mean, you got concerned. You were
I did.
saddened. But
Yes.
then to carry it beyond that is the biggest leap here, isn't it?
I think that many of us in our lives take that leap and we don't even think about it because it just seems like the right thing to do. You were telling me about how you became involved 35 years ago in doing these regular television programs. It was just the next step for you. And for me, this became my next step as well. And World Without Genocide began as a small student organization, and now it's a 501c3, so a nonprofit human rights organization headquartered at a leading law school. We do what the next step is as it appears in front of us.
And you are an adjunct professor there.
Yes, that's correct.
With many doctorates. I was impressed with
Thank you.
your background. Well, let's define genocide, because I read on the internet about 50 definitions, literally. But which one do you choose, and how do you define it?
Well, first I want to give you a little bit of background. We tend to think that the word genocide always existed, and it didn't. For example, during the Holocaust, one of the most cataclysmic genocides ever, there was no word genocide. There was a Polish Jew named Raphael Lemkin who fled from Poland when the Nazis occupied that country in 1939. And he came to the United States and tried desperately to bring his family to safety. And 49 people from his extended family all perished in the gas chambers and then in the crematoria at Auschwitz. And Raphael Lemkin felt there had to be a word to describe the killing of a people. Not the killing of people for which we have such words, homicide, suicide, fratricide, but a people. He coined the word genocide. Geno from the Greek meaning tribe or group, and cide meaning killing. And then he said, now that we have the word, there has to be a law to prevent genocide and to punish the perpetrators. And it was he who wrote the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and the Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. And it's defined, genocide is defined in that convention as the deliberate intent to exterminate in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. Now, people often say, well, what about this example or that example? Is it genocide? And I believe, as do the people with whom I work, that whenever a group as such is being targeted, innocent civilians targeted based only on who they are, that's when we must stand up and we must pay attention and we must protect, prevent, prosecute, and remember.
Which are your
Our
defining
four
words that you use. Say them again, because they're such powerful words.
The first word is protect. To protect innocent people from being marginalized and discriminated against. And we see this in our own communities, where people are being targeted based only on who they are.
Bullying in the schools, in a sense, has that element.
There was a horrifying article in the Star Tribune, I think it was in Sunday's paper, about an African-American youth tormented in a school on the Iron Range. You saw that. Tormented horrifically until he finally took his own life. We need to protect against this kind of behavior, whether it's happening here or happening 8,000 miles away. So that's protect. Prevent. How do we put in place the laws and the policies that can prevent people from doing this? So the anti-bullying steps, for example, that our own Minnesota legislature has passed in this past legislative session. And then how do we prosecute those people who are perpetrating these crimes? How do we make sure that those people who are offending against people based only on who those people are truly held accountable? And then finally, how do we remember those whose lives and whose cultures have indeed been affected?
And the remembering is an important piece, isn't it? Because if we don't remember, we don't learn from some of history's tragedies.
That's right.
The thing that is so amazing to me when I think about this is that we can be so insular as people. We can go about our life and, you know, we're all very, very aware of the Twin Towers horrible incident, but we're less aware of what's going on right now in the Congo or what's going on right now in the Sudan. And it's puzzling to me in a way that we are so isolated.
You know,
but why do you think?
I think that most people welcome an opportunity not to be isolated. The people who are watching this discussion, for example. At World Without Genocide, we do educational programming all year through many different opportunities. We offer classes and workshops and a summer institute for high school and college students. We've made 2 documentaries with Twin Cities Public Television. We have a traveling exhibit. We have a speakers bureau. And we find that over the course of a year, we've reached thousands and thousands of people because they want to know what's going on in the world. So it's not that they don't want to know, it's that many of them perhaps have not previously had an opportunity to know.
That makes sense. And our newspaper coverage and our television coverage is pretty limited. I mean, we don't get the backstory. We don't get the human interest stories very much. We get more of the statistics, don't we?
Yes. And I like to think that one of our opportunities at World Without Genocide is to help paint a fuller picture. Recently, for example, we did a program called Religions and Genocide, from the Holocaust to ISIS. And we looked at the way that this overlay of religion has been used and manipulated by different groups over time to be able to marginalize a group, to be able to allow a group in power to take other people's resources. And that gave a backstory and allowed us to really address this issue with a full audience. It's a subject that we'll be addressing in many different ways over the coming year.
When I started thinking about the genocide that I'm aware of but don't know enough about, I thought of Rwanda, where you've been. I thought of Darfur, where George Clooney is helping to educate us. I thought of Cambodia, way, way back. I thought of Bosnia. And of all of these, could you just pick maybe 1 or 2 and tell us a little bit about some of the more important things you think we should learn from a couple of these? Because
actually,
we don't have time to go into all of them.
We can look at all of them as a group.
Okay.
And what we try to encourage people to think about are 2 different kinds of causes. One kind we call ultimate causes. So what are the underlying reasons why these atrocity crimes happen? And the other is what we call approximate cause. Proximate meaning nearby or next to, or the cause that people use as the label. So the proximate cause might be someone's skin color, or someone's religion, or someone's ethnic identity. But the ultimate cause might have to do with scarce resources. And
So
those,
the ultimate's the real cause.
that's right.
The economic cause.
Exactly. The economic cause, or in many parts of the world, what's happening as a result of global climate change, where there are increasing droughts and floods, and these episodes happen with increasing severity. What the result is that people are going hungry, people who otherwise would have been able to be fed. That's certainly what happened in Rwanda. It's what happened in Darfur. If we think about the ultimate cause of the Holocaust, interwar Germany between World Wars I and II was utterly economically devastated. So it's these ultimate causes that really we have to watch out for.
That cause competition for resources.
That's right, for scarce resources of food, of access to water, increasingly access to water.
Healthcare.
Access to scarce land, to land that will have rich enough soil to continue to grow crops to feed people.
As I think about the climate change part of this, which I really hadn't connected the dots on that, which is huge. This scares me because I think we could have more competition, of course. We will have more.
Absolutely.
But to do it without genocide will be the challenge.
That's right. And it means, I believe, that there has to be a way to equalize the resources in a country so that everyone has access and so that groups cannot be marginalized and excluded from having access. Now, that requires that civil society plays a role and that people's human rights are protected from the very bottom on up. One of the basic human rights enshrined in the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, passed in 1948, 66 years ago, is the access to food. And if everyone can be sure that they can get enough food and enough nutritious food and that they can get it safely, that takes away a great deal of the competition that we see right now in so many places in the world.
Think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we don't have those basic needs met,
that's right,
we're not going to be good people, probably, because we're desperate. I wanted to ask you, and we don't have a lot of time left, about something I knew nothing about. I thought I should have known about this. I'm guessing a lot of you won't know about it, but the connection between what's going on in the Congo and our using and usage of cell phones.
Absolutely.
Fill us in on this, because this is so interesting and shocking.
Under the ground, the Democratic Republic of the Congo is the richest country on the planet. Above the ground, it's among the poorest in every social indicator, in literacy, maternal health, nutrition, infant mortality. And why that big disconnect? Well, the issue is that Northeast Congo has under the ground the minerals that we need in our small electronics, in our cell phones, in our laptops, in our media players. All of these resources are under the ground. And what has happened since the spillover of the genocide in the neighboring country of Rwanda is that armed militia groups from other countries, as well as independent paramilitary groups, have been fighting a brutal battle for control over those resources.
So they're coming in across the borders.
Coming in, as well as armed groups within the country itself. And the brutality, Mary, is horrific. More than 6 million people have perished.
And that number, I just was so startled. I mean, that's one of that has to be at the top almost of numbers of people killed, 6 million.
It's the worst since World War II.
Okay.
Utterly the worst. And that's also a number that resonates.
It's not on our radar much, is it?
Well, it's becoming more and more part of the consciousness of people who are deeply engaged with human rights, as well as with corporations who use these minerals in the production of all of their small electronics.
Well, we're going to put on the screen a graph that shows you which companies that we buy our cell phones from, etc., have the best record in terms of human rights and paying attention. But none of them are great.
Well, they've gotten a lot better since that last analysis was done. An organization in Washington, D.C. called the Enough Project is the one that prepares it. And by the end of 2014, so hopefully by the end of December, their new rankings will come out. And both Apple and Intel currently are at 100%.
Oh my goodness, that's great. Well, we may wait and get the new information and roll in here. But I don't think many people realize that there is this connection with the Congo. So we need to pay attention when we're buying products to this kind of connection.
At World Without Genocide, we really try to engage people not only in big legislative issues, but also in these individual policy opportunities, so that you as a consumer can understand that you as an individual have power, but you also as a voter can exercise that power as well, and can encourage cities and states to take the right steps as well. We hope that the state of Minnesota will get on board and will pass a bill in the 2015 session such that Minnesota's electronics will be purchased only from those companies that are at the top of that chart.
Well, we'll get this on during the legislative session so we can influence some people. Are there some other things, we just have a couple minutes left, that you think ordinary citizens can do?
Yes. In 2013, Governor Dayton signed into law a bill that designates every single April in the state of Minnesota as Genocide Awareness and Prevention Month. Why April? Well, there are 6 genocides that have their official and formal memorializations in the month of April: Darfur, Cambodia, Bosnia, Rwanda, and the Holocaust. And what we urge individuals to do is to get their organizations, their faith communities, their schools, any group that they're involved with, to play a role in this and to have a program in the month of April, particularly this April, which is the designation of the 100th anniversary of the genocide of the Armenians, that final 6th anniversary in April. Between 1915 and 1918, during World War I, more than 1.5 million Armenians perished at the hands of the Ottoman Empire. And it's so important, as this 100th anniversary is approaching, to be aware of that and to truly remember and to honor those who perished at that time.
So do you have people that can go out to the grade schools, to the high schools, colleges here?
Yes.
That's wonderful. We'll put their website up in just a second. And so that would be a wonderful thing that we could do with the young people.
Absolutely.
And with, I'm thinking, service organizations. Of course, as you mentioned, faith communities.
Colleges and universities, any civic or public or private organization, we really invite to join with us in raising awareness. We always say, Mary, knowledge is not power. Knowledge plus action equals power.
Oh, I like that. Action is a great additive word. On the screen, we want to put now a way to get a hold of Ellen's organization, World Without Genocide. You can go to their website, which is very, very informative. I learned a lot, worldwithoutgenocide.org, or you can email them at info@worldwithoutgenocide.org. And we have a phone number too, 952-693-5206. Well, thank you so much for coming down. We have a minute and a half left. The students that you're working with,
Yes.
are they all law school students?
No, we hold an annual institute every August, 3 days in August for high school and college students. We also have interns who are college students, and we really invite students from high school on up to become engaged with our work.
So they could
They're
be
the future.
scientists, they could be sociologists,
Absolutely.
I mean, in terms of preparation.
That's right. Human
Okay.
rights can be part of everyone's future.
That's a wonderful, wonderful thing to leave us with. And tell us again the definition that includes action. That was
Knowledge is not power. Knowledge plus action equals power.
well, on that wonderfully important note. I want to thank you. Thanks
Thank
so
you,
much
Mary.
for
It was a real pleasure.
educating us, and I learned a lot. I'm sure the viewers did too.
Thank you.
Good luck with your important work.
Thank you.
Very rarely do we have someone that's working so hard in such a big field on the shows, so it's been great to learn more. And do go to her website and do some more reading, because I think the more we're aware, the more we have personal power. Thank you for being with us. We'll be back again next week. Until then, have a good week.